Welcome to Dadograms. Today I want to explore a truth that we've all heard but rarely thought through. The statement that bad things happen to good people. I've had to justify events in my own life that way, and I've had to explain things to my own kids with that phrase a few times. And I'm sure each and every one of you have said those words or at least thought them when tragedy strikes you or those close to you. And that's an acceptable statement to say in the moment, but it's important to remember that over time, wounds heal, and that we develop scar tissue, and that we carry on. By that I mean that tragedy and time can be transformational. And I want to talk a bit about what can happen next in the process after tragedy strikes. Do bad events always lead to bad outcomes? Or can something painful become part of a greater good? Let's explore that by walking through a powerful, real-world example. I'm going to tell you a story, and as I go, I want you to think as I speak as to whether each specific event in the story is good or bad. Not based on hindsight, just based on exactly where we are in the moment that I'm telling this story. Here we go. And this story isn't fiction. This really happened. There was a young lady, and her name was Jackie, and she was a college student majoring in engineering. And on the night of September 19th, 1999, she was riding home from a friend's birthday party, and they'd had a great time. On the way home, though, the car she was riding in was hit by a drunk driver head on, and this crash was fatal. Several of Jackie's friends died that night. Now, luckily, Jackie and a few others survived, but they were badly injured from the impact. Their car was mangled, they were injured, and they couldn't get out on their own. They were trapped inside. Now, in the distance, they heard the sound of an ambulance rapidly approaching. In a day before cell phones were readily available, someone had found a way to make that important call to save lives. And for the girls in the car, that sound of the siren was a lifeline, as the car they were trapped in had caught fire. Still, the ambulance wasn't fast enough. Before help arrived, the girls began to burn. Now, thankfully, the ambulance crew was able to put the fire out, mostly. And as soon as the flames receded, they began rescuing survivors. Everyone was pulled from the car, except Jackie. They didn't have the right tools to reach her. And the fire started again while she was still trapped. The paramedics did what they could, but they didn't have any more fire extinguishers, and the fire overtook the vehicle, and Jackie burned. Less than a minute later, though, another miracle. A fire truck arrived. They quickly extinguished the flames and were finally able to pull Jackie out. And despite being severely injured, she actually survived. Now stop and think about what you just heard. From one moment in that story to the next, did your opinion of events change back and forth from good to bad? And if I told you nothing else about this story except how it ended there, what do you think? Was the outcome for Jackie ultimately good or bad? Tough to say, right? Because the truth is, you can't know in the moment. You have to zoom out. You have to consider this nightmare after you're free and clear of it. After there has been some time between the event and the moment you consider how it changed your life. Time gives us clarity, and even then, sometimes it's not about the event. It's about the person who lived it, because only Jackie could truly define what it all meant. But here's my perspective. I know that if she had died, I would never have heard of her. And I also know that if she hadn't gone through that ordeal, I probably wouldn't have heard of her either. But because she did survive this hellish experience, I did learn about her. I first heard her story while serving as the department head at HSL 37 in Hawaii, a Navy helicopter squadron. As you can probably guess, we are a very safety-focused culture in naval aviation. We are constantly reminded to be safe so that safety on the job is always in the forefront of our minds. And that's where I first saw her. She was on a poster that hung on the wall in the squadron, and it made an impact. It was absolutely unforgettable. You see, Jacqueline Saburido was burned and scarred. But instead of letting it defeat her completely, she did the hardest thing imaginable. She chose to appear in public, on stage, even on Oprah, to speak out about her experience. She went on to be a global voice against drunk driving, and her image and her message reached more than 1 billion people around the world. And I'm absolutely confident Lives were saved because of her choice to speak out. That's the power of perspective. Her life's path was rerouted by tragedy, like a river blocked by a sudden rockfall. One moment she's drifting along, focusing on finishing college and hoping one day to take over her father's manufacturing business, and of course getting married, having children, and living a happy but otherwise undistinguished life. Then one fateful night, everything changed. Now she's fighting for survival through pain, both physical and mental, as she struggles through surgery after surgery, trying to repair all the damage that was caused and to replace the face that was lost. It would have been easy for her to have just given up, to have locked herself in her room at home, never to be seen or heard from again, or possibly give up and end it all herself. It would have been easy for her to have seen that every single thing that had happened to her was just bad, just plain old bad, with nothing good to be expected. I bet a lot of folks would have thought that, and most of us wouldn't have blamed someone if they did, but not Jackie. That's not how she saw it after some time and some healing had passed. Despite it all, instead of hiding herself, she stood up front for all to see. She spoke out boldly on what she believed about the dangers of driving drunk, and she was heard by millions and millions of people. And it is impossible to count how many lives she saved in the process. Jackie's story isn't just something to admire, it's something to learn from. Because if she could walk through fire, literally and figuratively, and come out the other side with purpose, then who knows, maybe, just maybe, you can face whatever pain or struggle or detour in your life you're dealing with too. You may not know what your new path looks like yet. You may not feel strong enough to keep going. And you may feel the bitterness of having had your perfect life turned upside down. But remember, strength doesn't show up as a quick confidence or the upbeat attitude the day after tragedy. It shows up by not quitting the struggle, of standing up again, of speaking out, or maybe just enduring one more day. And when you're out of energy, out of options, out of hope, that's when you need something bigger to hold on to. And in those moments, even one word of hope can make all the difference. I want to end this Dadogram with some words of hope for those of you who are struggling. A simple poem I read as a kid at my grandma's house, one that still speaks to me now. And while I don't have the voice of someone like Morgan Freeman, I'll do my very best to read it to you. It's called Footprints in the Sand by Carolyn Joyce Carty. One night a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand. One belonged to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life, there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in his life. That really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there's only one set of footprints. And I don't understand why, when I needed you most, you would leave me. And the Lord replied, my son, my precious child, I love you and would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to this somewhat somber and hopeful Dadogram. In keeping with Jackie's message, I feel it only right to say it again. Don't drink and drive. The best move if you're going out with the intent of drinking is to take an Uber there. That way, you have no choice but to take an Uber home. I'm JasonMGarrett. Keep walking even when the path changes and gets hard. Because just like Jackie demonstrated throughout her life, the story is not over yet.